Hello everybody, this is BlueChipSim coming back at you. It is now 2018. This is going to be a blue chip year. Alright, so let's get down to it. As you might have read, and might be why you're here on the title, this is going to be a PMDG 737 NGX cold and dark startup tutorial. This is a new and updated 2018 tutorial. I haven't done one in the past, but it's 2018, so let's make a 2018 tutorial. So as a part of this cold and dark startup tutorial, we are going to be flying WestJet Flight 1722 from Vancouver down to Palm Springs. The gate-to-gate time is going to be about 3 hours, and this is going to be a two-part video. I'm not only going to do cold and dark startup, but I'm also going to do the entire takeoff process in this video, and then I'm going to do the descent, approach, and landing and parking, and even shutting down in the second video. So we should get two awesome videos out of this one awesome flight. These are two airports that we have not seen on on the channel before, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So as you can tell by the lawnmower sounds that you just heard, we are on the external power here. If we zoom out just a little bit and get to a better view, you can hear the external power that is connected. There's no ground power unit, I guess it's connected to gate power, but we're gonna go ahead and get into the cockpit. You'll notice everything is nice and dark. We're actually gonna click right here. So if you're new to the PMDG NGX, there's a click spot right on top of the yoke where you can actually hide the yoke. That's not a real aircraft feature, but if you don't have a cool camera system like Chase Plane, where you can like move around and get around the yoke, that is a very neat feature, so that you can come down here and see the CDUs. So we're going to come down here. We're going to, let's see which one, press and hold. There we go, it's this one that works. Press and hold menu when it's dark. Again, not a real function of the aircraft, but you have to be able to get into it to do certain things. So just to put it in the cold and dark state, just so you know, you go to that PMDG setup, panel state load, and then you click on NGX cold and dark. And then you can also set a default startup state. I have mine at NGX long, which is the startup state on the ground power unit. Ground power on, but where all the systems are on. So right now, first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to hook up the ground connection. So I misspoke earlier and said we're connected to gate power. That's not true, because we're not connected to anything. That's why we're cold and dark. So we're going to go ahead and connect the ground power and the air conditioning. Get that going. So when you're in cold and dark, the first thing that you're going to want to do is go up to the overhead panel. If you look right here, normally when you're in the aircraft, this guarded switch is closed and in the on position, but it is not when it's cold and dark, because this is the battery master switch. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on the guard here and flip on the battery. Notice everything starts up, everything's good. You can use this dial right here on the left to look at the amps coming in from the power sources. So right now we're on the battery. We have 28 volts ground power. If we switch it over here, it'll show us everything that's coming in on ground power. We're not connected to it yet, and because the PMDG is so awesome, if you leave it on the battery for too long, the battery will actually run out. So next thing we're going to do, since before we did connect the ground power, we're going to come right down here to this switch right here. We're going to left click it and turn the ground power on. Now we are connected to the ground power. You can hear a lot more systems turning on and starting up. Because when you're on battery, these systems are more limited. When you're on battery, you'll only have the captain's side screens, and yeah. So actually, if you look down there, before it said dual op FMC restored, or dual FMC op restored. That's because we did switch to ground power and got off of just the battery. Next thing we're going to do is come here in the middle, flip on those emergency lights, and because we can, go ahead and turn on the fasten seatbelt sign while we're there. Now, if you're into doing tests, there is a lights test switch right here. First thing we want to do, right click that, turn that on, and that will illuminate every light in the cockpit. Just do a quick scan, looking around everywhere. At the center pedestal, looking at the overhead panel, making sure everything is lit up, because you don't want to have any faulty lights. Then we can left click it to get it back into that off position. Then the next thing that we're going to want to do, this is also something you have to do if you start up in the NGX long state. We want to take both of these dials. These are your IRSs. In the Boeing aircraft, the IRSs are what align the aircraft with, basically it gives you your GPS coordinates. It's different than GPS, but that's the main function. We're going to click it once, right click it once into that aligned position. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down into the FMC, click on FMC here, pause in it, and we're going to set our IRS position. So the best way to do that is to go to next page and click on one of these, GPS left or right. You'll notice they're the exact same. You'll copy it down here into the scratch pad, and then you'll just paste it right in here. We've entered the IRS position, and now we can go back up to the overhead panel, right click each of them once again, put them in nav, and you'll notice we are aligned and our screens are, well, as they should be, ready to go. So that is the quickest way possible to get the aircraft from a cold and dark state to a turnover state. Now, but we're going to keep it going, and we're going to go ahead and set up for the flight. So the next thing we're really going to do is we're going to go down into this FMC, and we're going to get our flight ready to go. So first things first, we're going to go to FS Actions and then Payload. So I use PFPX, which is Professional Flight Planner X, to plan the flight. I will do a future tutorial video on PFPX. Can be a little complicated at the start, but it is really easy and spits out some pretty awesome flight plans. So our zero fuel weight today is going to be 124,000.6 pounds. And we put that in there, and it'll actually fill in first class, coach class, cargo, aft cargo. The easiest way, you can do this manually, but the easiest way to do it is just to put in your zero fuel weight that you get from your flight planner. And then the next step is we're going to do fuel. So your flight planner gives you that too. This is going to be your release fuel on your flight plan. And today's release fuel is 23,912 pounds of fuel. That is about 52% of our fuel load level. So now that we have that set, we can actually set up the plane and get ready to fly. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a reference airport, which is the one we're currently at, CYVR. That is Vancouver International Airport in Vancouver, Canada. We put that in, Gate, a lot of the times it doesn't work, so I normally never bother putting that in. And one cool thing here is it puts your starting airport automatically in the scratch pad, so you can either put it in origin or I have a company route saved in my documents. I export it from PFPX, so what it's going to allow me to do is I'm going to fill in the rest of the file name, which I already know because I made the flight not too long ago. And I'm going to put in KPSP01, that's the file name, and then it actually imports the flight and the flight plan. So we're going to be WestJet 1722. This is just for aesthetics, really. It's not mandatory that you put in a flight number. I just do because I'll keep track. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here to the middle. We're going to do departure and arrival. So since we are starting at CYVR, we're going to click here on this first line select key for departure. We're actually not using a SID according to our flight plan. We are just taking a direct, so we're going to do 08 right, and since we're not using a SID, we're just going to select 08 right and execute. We go to our legs, and you'll notice that our first waypoint is VR in B, and if you double check that with your route, if you don't have a SID in, you can double check with your route, and you'll notice that there's a DCT for direct, and then to VR in my case. Whereas if you have a SID, there's going to be a lot of extra waypoints in there that that are not listed on your route, but the final waypoint in the SID should match up with the SID on the route. That gets a little complicated, but we're going to move on to the perf init, which is one of the most important pages in setting up the flight plan. So the flight plan, the zero fuel weight as we did before, is 124.6 thousand. So if we fill that in, it'll give us our gross weight up here. Pressing buttons I shouldn't be. And then we're going to put in the release fuel right here as 23.9. That calibrates the fuel. Calibrates the fuel burn calculations if we put in exactly what we're planning on using versus what's actually in the tanks. So final reserves is a category that the flight plan should spit out to you, and I have 2.5 thousand pounds in there. And cost index, it is a mandatory field. I don't know the cost index for WestJet, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to put in 20. It's just a number that I came up with. So one thing that my flight plan did, which I don't really like, was it gave me, I should have gone back and fixed this, but I didn't because I'm just going to let the aircraft calculate it for me. It told me that my cruising altitude was going to be flight level 170. It wanted me to initially climb to 170 and then step to 390, which is really weird. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the plane figure it out. I'm going to use this, which is the maximum cruising altitude, and I'm just going to go underneath it to flight level 370 and deal with it that way. Double check our transition altitude with the charts. That is going to be correct. And then we come down here and click execute. So this is the takeoff performance page, the N1 limit page. So I calculate the stuff on this page using TopCat, which is a feature that you can get with PFPX, or it's a standalone program. But then there's also a lot of other calculators out there that will do this for you, but specifically I use TopCat. And you load in a profile. So what it spits out for me is that we're going to do a takeoff 2 derate, assume temperature of 37, so it's going to put us at climb 2 power. So 37 degrees Celsius selected temperature. So the engines are going to run as if it's 37 degrees outside, degrees Celsius, which is actually really hot, but it's going to reduce the power of the engines along with the 22 kb rate that we've selected. So finally we're going to go to takeoff. Top Cat gave me this number as well. I'm going to use flaps 1, which is fairly standard. We come over here and put in the wind, which is 170 at 0.4. Don't have to worry about slope because the slope of all runways in prepared is 0. There's no sloped runways. And then center of gravity, there's a nice trick in PMDG. If you click the button, it'll actually calculate the center of gravity for you, put it in the scratch pad, and then you just click it again and it puts it in. And then another cool thing about the NGX is that it suggests your V-speeds for you. And you can just click, click, and click. Now you've got all your V-speed. We got V1 at 148, we're going to rotate at 150, and V2 at 153. So trim is the next part we have to do. Our trim today is 5.42. So we're going to come down here to the trim wheel, and trim is a whole lot less accurate on the NGX than a lot of the other Boeing planes. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin this wheel until we're right between the 5 and the 6. We're just going to guess that it's somewhere around 5.42, right? And now the FMC is ready to go. So I'm going to take this one, just put it on the legs page as a quick reference. And we're going to continue to do the rest of the cockpit. So now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to do what is called the waterfall check. So we're going to go down each row and make sure things are set up the way we want them to. So next we need to turn on the yaw damper. That is a step that you can't do until your IRSs are aligned, but those have been aligned for a while, so it's time to put those on. Fuel pumps, we will, the wing fuel pumps we will turn on after we start up the engines. Everything else we're just double checking. Again, we'll turn on the APU generators once we get the APU. Come down the middle, we have our fast seatbelt signs on. Probe heat, another thing that we will turn on after the engines. Same with hydraulic pumps. We're not going to need any anti-ice today because although it's the middle of January in Canada, it's about 41 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so we won't have to worry about anti-ice. Come down this way, make sure that the packs are off. If the packs are on, you're not going to be able to start the engines. That's a very important fact. Packs off for starting the engines, otherwise the NGX won't let you do it. Then we're going to come down here. This is the cabin pressurization panel. You need to put this at your flight altitude, and then you need to put this one at your airport landing altitude, which for me at Palm Springs is about 500 feet. It's obviously going to vary a whole lot depending on where you're flying to. So we've got the overhead panel set up for our pre-start or pre-pushback or whatever you'd like to call it. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to set up this MCP, or rather the mode control panel. So I'm going to put the speed selector at V2 plus 20, which would be 173. That'll get blanked out really quickly, but if you set it, it'll still be there if something were to go awry, and then you can quickly do speed select and keep your speed going. Heading, I'm going to set it to the heading of the runway, which is 083. That is the more, I guess, exact way about doing it. We have runway heading of 083. And then, if you were being controlled by ATC, you'd put your altitude selector wherever they've cleared you to. But, for detail's sake, we're doing this flight offline today. So we're going to throw it all the way up to our cruising altitude of 370. And then one thing I like to do, I like to go ahead and on auto throttle. And if I can, VNAV and LNAV. But, one quick thing. To be able to do that, sure you flip the flight directors on. And also make sure you turn on the captain's flight director before the first officer. So you'll notice this little green light right here. If I turn this off, oh, it flips to the first officer's side. That indicates the master flight director. So I'm going to redo it and get the master flight director on the captain's side. Next let's go ahead and arm VNAV and LNAV. And then, next up on the list, we need to go ahead and get the pressure. Going to quickly pull up active sky for P3D V4. Look at the pressure, and we're at 29.85. So we're going to get back in the sim and set that out. And if you'll notice, down here on our primary flight display, the altitude is right on top of that yellow line. Shows us that our pressure is pretty much correct. If you don't have a weather program that tells you the pressure outside, you can easily press the B button to set it. So I'm going to scroll this way up, and you'll notice down here, it's like, oh, it thinks we're 680 feet in the air, where we're actually like 20 feet in the air. I'm going to press B, and look, now we're good. We're back down to 20 feet in the air. Alright, so next thing we're going to set is auto brake. We're going to left click it once, set that to RTO, which stands for rejected takeoff. Flaps we will set after startup, and everything else looks like we're pretty ready to go. So the next step is the APU. So the APU is very simple in this aircraft. Click it once to on, then you click it again to start, and what you want to watch is this little number right here, this little dial. First it'll say low oil pressure. This dial is going to spool all the way up here to 8, between 8 and 10 EGT. Oh, here it goes, getting all the way up, and then it's going to settle back down. This whole process takes probably about anywhere between 45 to 60 seconds to start out. There we go. Now it's starting to fall back down, and then you'll know that the APU is on when you'll see it on the bus transfer. These source off lights will or the APU gen off bus. There we go. That's the one that lights up. So now we know the APU is running, so we can flip on to the APU gens by clicking each one of those. Now we're going to right click, ground power off. Make sure that you are on the APU gen before you turn off that ground power, because it will put you back on the battery, turn some stuff off, and lots of things can go wrong. So we're going to go back down to FS actions, ground connections. We're going to go ahead and remove the wheel chocks. So we're going to come down here and look at the parking brake. Pull the parking brake, make sure it's set. The ground power, disconnect that. Disconnect the air conditioning unit, and we'll get a little bit quieter in the cockpit. And then remove the pitot covers, and then remove the wheel chocks. We are removed from the wheel chocks. Next thing we have to do, actually we're going to go back down in there. We're going to go to our doors. We're going to close up our doors, make sure that everything's closed. We only had the left entry forward open, so we're good there, and we're going to get back on that legs page just for reference. Press Control J to remove this jetway, and now we are ready for pushback. What's that, 25 minutes? You can start up this plane so much faster once you get used to it, but it's always good to take your time and get through it. So we're going to bring up GSX, and we're going to prepare for pushback and departure. We can use Air Canada to push us back. No, I don't feel like de-icing. It's only 41 degrees outside. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go nose right, tail left. So we're going to come out here, and we're going to do a quick taxi briefing. So this right here, this is taxiway Mike M. We're going to go all the way down Mike until we reach that taxiway over there. Whoop, there we are. That one right there, that is taxiway Victor. And then we're going to take Victor all the way until right here. We're going to take a right, taxiway Lima, cross this runway here, cross runway 13/31 on Lima, and then come down here, and there's the threshold of 08. So we're going to come down here in the cockpit. Looks like we're ready to push back, so we're going to release the parking brake and get ready to go. Hey, and we're being pushed back. So next on the list is engine startup. So we're going to start engine 2 first. That is usually standard operations. So we're going to left click it onto the ground starter. And then our main focus comes to this lower ICAS panel. And we're looking at that N2 number right up there. We want that number to reach 25. Once it reaches 25, we're going to click on number 2 right here. There we go. And that puts in the fuel for engine number 2. And we're going to go outside and listen to it. What a beauty. And if you just heard that click, you're pretty attentive. That click was the starter auto turning off, which it does. So now once it auto turns off, we can go to the engine number 1 and do the same procedure. Come down here, wait for engine number 1 in 2 to reach 25, and then once it reaches 25, we can put the fuel in for engine number 1 as well. And this next one, we'll listen to it start up from the cockpit. And put in the fuel. GSX is done with its pushback, so we're going to get our parking brake set so they can release us and let us go. Also, like this clock, so that we can keep track of the gate-to-gate time. Alright, as they are, as engine number 1 is finishing its startup, we're going to take care of a few other things. Next thing is, we're going to come down here. This is the TCAS panel. We're going to right click this until it's all the way to the right. That'll put it in TARA mode, so that we can see other aircraft in the air. Even though there are none, we'll still see them. We're going to click this button so we get our traffic. We're also going to put weather on there, and then we're going to go to the overhead panel now that everything is started up. Flip all these fuel pumps on. Later we'll have to turn off the left and right center fuel pumps, but that will happen when we are flying. Turn on our hydraulics, also our window heat, and we'll turn on the anti-ice and probe heat when we're actually in the air. We can go ahead and turn the packs on now, and we flip the engine generators. This is another really important step with the power. Make sure you turn on those engine generators before you turn off the APU here. Right click the APU. Everything's still running, so that means we did it right. And if you want to check the power, you can set this to Gen 1, also Gen 2, and it'll show you exactly what's going on there. Now, we are ready to taxi, so we're going to turn on our taxi and our turn-off lights. Anti-collision light, logo and wing we will keep off because of this light outside. and the strobe will turn on when we are entering or crossing runways. So, next up, we're going to do a quick flight controls check. So we're going to click this top right button here. So we're going to do that real quick. We're going to go full right on the rudder, full left on the rudder. We're going to go full right on the ailerons, full left on the ailerons, full back on the elevators, and full forward on the elevators. We have a functional, or we have all our functional flight controls. So now we're going to put in flaps 1, and we're going to move ahead. TCAS was giving us a traffic advisory there, or it was showing some traffic on our screen, but I have honestly no idea what it is. Here we are rolling, and we are en route to runway 08 right. So, if you've made it this far, you've honestly done the most complicated and most intensive part of the flight, other than landing. But let me rephrase, you've done the most intensive part of the takeoff. So now we are going to sit back and relax. I'm going to speed up taxi a little bit, and we'll see you when it's time to do a little bit more stuff right before we roll up on the runway. Alright, we are starting to roll up on the runway soon. As you saw before, I did turn on my strobe lights when crossing that last runway. Now we are going to turn on the landing lights and off the taxi and runway turn-off lights just to get ready. I'm going to ding the cabin, because we can. Do a quick double check of everything, clear out that lower ICAS, and get ready to go. So, this is one thing that I'm going to park up on the runway, going to line up, don't have to worry about traffic or anybody behind us. Probably not going to hold short line either, because there's no ATC, there's no traffic. I don't have to worry about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up on the runway, and I'm going to quickly go through the takeoff procedure, because as I'm doing it, I'd rather you see it before, or hear it before I do it. So I'm going to line up real quick here. On the runway, we're going to park, or stop right here, and we're going to go full on the brakes. So, what's going to happen is, I'm going to be looking down here at N1 while also looking forward. I'm going to rev this up to about 50%, and then on the NGX, there's a hidden click spot right here. So it's right in here, right to the bottom left of this course knob. That activates the toga, or takeoff / go around. Once I am stable with both engines at about 50%, I'm going to hit that toga, and I'm going to go. Once I hear V1, I'm going to call out 80 knots, I'm going to call out V1, rotate, and once I get to rotate, I'm going to nose up about 12 to 15 degrees. And then pretty soon after that, I am going to activate the autopilot up here, Command A, on the top left. Because I could hand fly a lot more, but it's a very smart aircraft, and it's a simulator. and I love to look at the visuals that are outside in the cockpit and take screenshots. That's just me. If you like to hand fly, you just hand fly and follow the flight director. Otherwise, you can hit that autopilot and you'll be good. Alright, I think we're ready to go. So first, I'm going to rev up to 50%. See as it goes up to 50%, I'm going to get ready on the click spot. We are stable, and we're going to hit tow. Now I don't have to do anything else with the thrust. I can even take my hands off, but I'm not going to because it's not safe. Here we begin our takeoff roll. Knots. Trying to get back over to that center line. Center line discipline. I need a little bit more of it. Ooh, hello. Gonna use the whole runway, aren't we?
V1.
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 Rotate.
V2.
And now we have a positive rate as shown on the primary flight display, displaying a little bit of gear high. Once we get to about 1,000 feet, I'm going to put in the autopilot. That's when both LNAV and VNAV will for sure take over. Alright, we're at about 900 to 1,000 feet. Go ahead and click that autopilot. And we're going to let the autopilot do its thing. We're going to click this one more time to turn the gear off. We'll turn off the hydraulics, and we can also turn off auto brake. And if you've made it this far, congratulations, you have taken off in the PMDG NGX. Now we're going to go outside. Brace your ears. This might be loud. There we go. A beautiful snowy Vancouver airport with a beautiful green Quebec, North America around the outside. I guess I needed to change the season for Orbex, didn't I? But the airport does look beautiful, as well as the bay and everything around it. As we climb out of Vancouver, I believe we just passed our first waypoint, which was that VRMB. Now we're moving on to WCMB, take a left, and then we're going to swing it around and head down towards Palm Springs. We can go flaps up now, and until we get to 10,000 feet, we are going to be skirting just under 250 knots. Yep, we'll probably speed up to 250 once the flaps are retracted, which they are now. And once we get to 10,000 feet, we will turn off the landing lights, and we will also double check that our speed increases, and do a quick check of the overhead panel. So I want to thank you so much for watching this video. As I realized I forgot to put the flight clock over there. At least I have one clock right. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I will get part 2 out very soon because landing is just as entertaining and fun and cool to learn as taking off and setting up the aircraft. Probably be a little bit shorter of a video, a little bit shorter of a process, but I'm looking forward to finishing this flight, getting that video out as well. And for now, thank you so much for watching, and I wish you all a great day and a great 2018. Bye-bye now.